I heard him go, dude.
It's time for that. Oh, I have to close
I-
this because the light outside.
Oh, I was gonna say, was that gonna bother you staring at them all falling on the
You know,
floor?
like power lines and.
So today is the first day that we're really going to start working on the limbs. There's four limbs that are more of like focusing on some of the external, internal parts of our worlds, where we're looking at how we can clean up our lives, how we can restrain from certain things that are not harmonious for us, how we can learn how to be better in our relationships with ourselves and with others. And then we move into how we can cleanse our bodies, working with some of the asana practice, and how we can work with the breath, starting to bridge that physical and mental. And now we're going to start moving into the internal worlds. And the next four, which we're going to practice one today, we're going to talk about Pratyahara. And the next time we meet, we're going to talk about the last three in the 8 limbs, because they kind of all come together, and they really are studied, those 3 together, when it moves in more into the deeper meditation. So with Pratyahara today, it's the first one that we actually take any of the external influences, and we start to learn how to maybe observe but not get attached or triggered, so that we can go internal and start to focus. So Pratyahara really is focus. It's the focus, and it's the restraining of the senses. So we're allowing things to happen in the outside world. It's almost like we're in the eye of the storm. We notice the things that are going on around us. We can hear the things, we can see the things, but we're not actively involved in it. We may be right in the middle, but we're at that calm state. So we're restraining the external senses. And that's something that's really, really difficult for us to do, because from the time that we're born, we're always using our senses. So we have our sight, we have our smell, we have our touch, we have our hearing, we have our taste. So all 5 of these senses is what connects us with our external worlds. And we rely on those all the time. That's what connects us with the outside world. So in order to not shut them off, because they don't turn off, right? And that's kind of futile, but being able to not allow them to be the forefront, or to allow yourself the luxury of being able to not be focused on those senses and just to be drawn inward, is Pratyahara. So Pratyahara is the practice of interiorization of the senses, which develops tranquility and forms a receptive basis for meditation practice. So most people go, I can't sit still, I can't do this. They say, I can't meditate because I can't stop myself from just being quiet. How do you do that? How do you just sit still? So when you're in an environment where you hear outside things, so you might hear traffic, you might hear sirens, you might hear a dog bark, you might hear a baby cry, you might hear music in the background, or just the stillness in itself, and you might hear a little bit of that ringing in your own ears, right? So we hear all these different things. We might have smells. There might be smells that are distracting to us. And instead of trying to shut them out and say, I need the most quiet place to meditate, is to be able to allow those things to occur and let them take a back seat and just be an observance and know that they're there, but not allowing them to influence what you're doing and focus. So I invite people to hear those sounds and to notice that they're there, and then to send them to the background, almost like a white noise. So you're disconnecting from your sensory impulse, which can be sometimes very difficult to do. We're wired to have a reaction because we've been using our senses since the day we were born. So sense withdrawal means that the senses cease to be engaged or connected to the objects traveling in the train of the mind. So you might have a smell that comes in while you're trying to focus or internalize, You have a smell that comes along, and then all of a sudden it reminds you of something, and then that reminds you of something, and then you go on this train of thought because that one smell came in, right? So knowing where to disconnect from that, smelling it and observing it, but not creating the story and not following the train of thought that goes along with that scent, right? So it does not mean the suppression, repression, or the stopping of those thoughts. Because the monkey mind, as they call it, it does not stop thinking. That is its job. It will never stop doing that. To try to make it stop is actually more of a distraction than trying to allow it to do its thing and be an observer. And to just say, okay, I can see that my train of thought is moving in this direction. I'm going to come back to my focal point. And it's okay to not get upset because it's just doing its job. It's like telling a puppy to sit. It doesn't always want to sit, but eventually that puppy moves into a dog, and that dog has different behavior, and it will listen a little bit more and be a little more disciplined, which your mind will be a little more disciplined. Okay. So they may naturally slow down or decrease to some degree, but the method itself is to break that contact. So to cease connecting with the thought patterns, and this means allowing thoughts to flow without interruption, while the senses are simply not diverted into those thoughts. Yes, this means allowing the thoughts to flow without interruption, while the senses are simply not diverted into those thoughts. So what are some of the ways that we can get distracted from the outside world in our lives? Try to think of your daily life. What are some of the things that prevent you from really just sitting in silence? What are the things that trigger you or will get your attention no matter what?
Family.
Okay, family. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I mean, phone calls.
Phone calls.
Yeah, especially like if your phone's not vibrate and you're trying to meditate and then you hear it go over in the corner, you're like,
Yeah,
how can we do
it's
that
got
though?
this on-off button on the side. It's the easiest thing. On the iPhone, you just push this button.
Yeah, mine has a silencer, so it doesn't have any.
Like if you're, like a lot of times, like if I'm walking or something, I'll have the music on and you're getting in your little zone, and
Yes.
but then you have a phone call, and so you feel that obligatory. Oh, I got to pick up, especially if it's your mom or whatever,
Mhm.
So, and that breaks that flow that you're in, you know.
Right. But having music, what is that doing?
I don't know. It's kind of like, for me, it's kind of like the meditating. Like it just kind of, you just get in and you don't think about everything. You're just going. So,
What sense is that activating though?
I don't know. It makes you want to move. I don't know.
Hearing.
Yeah. I mean,
Out of the five senses,
Mhm.
that's triggering or activating
mhm,
one of those senses.
mhm. Yeah.
She's like, well, that changes
I
everything.
know, I really enjoy it.
Yeah.
I don't, but although I don't mind sitting, like when we're meditating, it's very relaxing and peaceful too. I don't mind silence. I think I
Right.
used to when I was younger, but as I've gotten older, I don't mind silence. I actually relish it now. So
I've always been one. I just want to be alone.
Mhm.
yeah.
I get so upset like if I'm around a lot.
Yeah.
I just think that-
So what it's really, and you can go for your walks and listen to your music and all that stuff, and that's not really the situation. We're talking about like when you're just trying to go inward,
Yeah.
and you're trying to connect with the internal world that you have, and you're trying to turn off all your senses. You close your eyes, you take your breath. What in your daily lives could disrupt that from occurring? Are you able to find that time in that space?
Okay. If feel like I could shut those other
You can
things
do
off.
that.
I feel like I
Okay.
feel like I can. Yeah.
Okay.
So I struggle with all the things that I need to do.
Okay.
You know, so the being and doing is what I've been working with.
The to-do list.
Yeah, there's a lot of, if I don't just get out of bed and basically go sit and do my meditation, it doesn't usually happen.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I start feeding the dog, and,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's time to go.
Yeah.
I just,
Well, we do move into the next one, which is concentration. So that's more the mental aspect. Right now, we're just learning how to shut off our senses of hearing, smelling, seeing, tasting, you know, all of those things so that we can sit quietly. Where some people really get distracted. I have people come into a room, they said, you know, you can hear that clock tick, you know, different things like that. And I said, yeah, you can, you know? Or when people are sometimes in a restorative class, you can hear things in the, I said, yeah, you can, you know? Are you able to allow yourself to move past that noise and to still center yourself and put that in the background? You know, some people will sit and they'll fidget. They'll have this sensory of feeling. They'll feel something. Oh, they'll be on a soft blanket here. They start playing with that soft blanket. Yeah. Or, you know, just to close the eyes. You know, you'll have people that are in meditation, they'll have their eyes closed. They're all kind of nice and relaxed, and then they'll start looking around. Or when they're in treatment, sometimes even they'll be really relaxed. We'll get into something where they're beginning to let something then go, and then all of a sudden it's like they were wide open. They're like, well, what's going on? You know? So instead of staying in that internal dialogue with yourself or staying internal, they're reaching for external. They're looking for those responses, for those answers, for what's going on in the outside world, because if I can't feel comfortable with what's going on out there, I can't be in here.
I get that.
I know, I almost think
get
like,
it, but
dang, I think I'm like that.
I feel like I've gotten really good though at not letting all of that bother me. I've practiced that for a long time, I think. Just, you know, maybe not knowingly, but I did. So I'm good with that now, and I appreciate it. I love that. I can just kind of sink into whatever and let everything go. But you can always get a little deeper, you know,
Yes.
like you can keep practicing it.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
How many times have you been in your house and everybody's been gone and you start to do a practice and, you know, just breathing or connecting with yourself, and then all of a sudden somebody walks in the front door. Are you able to let that go, or does your thought go, well, who's that?
Yeah.
I think I know who that is. I think that might be so-and-so, but what are they doing?
I guess it depends on how intentional you are, like how intentional you want to get that practice in, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's an external sensory hearing that triggers the response that prevents us from staying in our internal world. So it does go quite deep. It's not just, you know, hearing the clock tick or different things like that.
I could definitely spend more time making it more intentional, you know?
Well, that's one step. You know, a lot of people say, I need to listen to music. I need to hear a mantra. I need something that's going to be distracting to me. But practicing Pratyahara turns off those senses so that you can deepen your concentration, which actually is the road to Samadhi, which is that tranquil bliss of meditation. So if you're constantly being, it's not really so much a distraction, but it's almost like if you're being like activated through your senses, how can you really come to that still point to be able to move into the deeper levels of meditation and concentration?
Yeah.
If you're always being stimulated.
I think it's a comfort level, and you have to get comfortable with just yourself, nothing else, you know?
That is something we're
it's
always
hard for
in the
people.
ups. Yeah, we're always external. How many times do we sit down and we sit down with ourselves for 2 seconds and we're already on our social media? We can't sit with ourselves. We're externally putting ourselves out there. So we're changing the flow of taking our energy and putting it out. And we're bringing it in. We're taking that flow and we're bringing it in. Yeah. So let's practice that for just a moment. Okay? Of noticing what senses activate and then what thoughts that create. And it's going to do something. You might start to sit in stillness and you'll hear the air go on, and then your thought is, oh, I hear that air go on, and then go, oh, well, it's kind of chilly in here. Oh, well, that's where you're breaking it down and you're really getting to the root of how you respond to the external world. So you ready to try it? Okay. All right, come on and get situated here. Nice tall spine. Take a deep breath in. Exhale out. And then just close your eyes, bringing your attention into your internal world. So start that flow coming in. And you may begin to notice some of the external factors that are around you. And right now I want you to just notice them. I want you to notice the external factors. I want you to notice the temperatures. I want you to notice the sounds. I want you to notice the smells. And when you notice any of those things, notice where your thoughts go. And this is an exercise in actually noticing, so I'm not asking you to suppress them or to just observe them. I want you to see how you respond to the external world. See if you can pick up on a train of thought that is initiated by one of the senses in this experience right now. And open your eyes. So how did you do with that exercise?
I was fine. I was thinking about you talking.
Okay, exactly.
That took like my
There you go.
train of thought along the way. I was like, well, I wonder if this is her triggering me.
Because you can hear me.
Yeah.
That was a sense. And absolutely. There you go. And so you noticed.
Yeah, and then I kept going on, and then I thought it was funny because I was like, oh, I'm going to tell her that her talking was my trigger.
I was not able to withdraw that sense. Carrie, how about you?
So I'm listening to the air because really it was pretty quiet.
It is.
The air. So I'm listening to the air, and I think, and I'm in my head, I'm thinking, okay, here's the air. Normally I can pretty much ignore this because it's kind of everywhere. It's just like background noise. But that's the conversation that I'm having. And then from there I move into what I did last night or how people interact. And so, and then I'm like, wait, come back to the air. So there's mine.
Yeah. And Michelle, how about you?
Totally got distracted with, first I started doing some breathing. Oh wow, I can really make my belly go out, because I've been thinking about that, like how important it is to get air down here. I was so fascinated with that yesterday. And then I started noticing my body. Oh, I didn't stretch this morning, so I start kind of stretching a little bit.
Yeah.
Wouldn't it be fun to hear everybody's internal conversation?
I
know.
Right.
But I gave myself permission at the same time because I knew it was an exercise. And
Absolutely.
Right. I'm like, oh, well, just go ahead and do what you're thinking, right?
But based on what we've learned up to this point with the 8 limbs, what would assist you in the practice of being able to internalize?
Just letting that thought go and getting back to...
Or back it up to probably two limbs into asana. That helps support us, right? So asana practice, which is your stretching practice, we learned that asana is what helps us to move our body so that we're comfortable. We're not in discomfort. The body's not yelling at us. The body's not saying, hey, listen, my low back right now is so darn tight, I can't sit here.
And you know, when you say that, now I'm like, okay, yeah, to get rid of those thoughts, not get rid of them, but to suppress them more. The breathing exercises just put me in a completely different spot, because then I'm focusing on the breathing, and that I don't have as much of a dialogue running in my head. So the breathing definitely changes things.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And so is stretching for me.
Absolutely.
You know, because then I am focused on my body feeling better.
Right.
You know?
So we're noticing how the building blocks of the 8 limbs actually prepare us to be able to sit and start to internalize, because we're able to clean up the externals so that we can start working on the internals. So this is one of the internals where you start working on this part of it so that you can internalize, and we're starting to clean up how we respond with our senses so that we can deepen our practice of meditation. So even going back to some of the niyamas and the yamas, what are some of the yamas or niyamas that we could use to help us with our internalization? We've been practicing these things. You know, what about saucha, which is cleanliness? The food that we eat. If we just had a big old pizza and we're all, you know, real heavy and kind of bloated, you know, or are we eating clean foods that is helping with our life force energy? You know, what kind of environment are we in? Are we in an environment that's real kind of like unpleasant, you know, or pleasant? Sometimes, you know, that is part of like that internalization, where you're not really so focused on what's going on around you. But if you are starting to do some of the other work that's in the beginning stages, then you're going to start preparing your environment. You're going to start preparing your body. You're going to start preparing your mind so that you can move into these things without being triggered. You know, ahimsa, non-harming, even ahimsa. You know, so am I in a state where, am I really fatigued and tired, or am I able to be in a state of meditation right now? Sometimes I just need to rest, and knowing when you should be moving into this. So a lot of those different things, even contentment and freedom, I just saw santosha, you know, that contentment of having that gratitude of where I am and what's going on in my life right now, instead of allowing yourself to be triggered by maybe, you know, different things that you're wanting to do. And so it's bringing that focus in, and like I said, you know, how many times do we go into social media? How many times do we sit and think, oh, well, what am I going to do next? What's on my agenda? What do I have going on? What experience do I want to do now? How many times do we have experience after experience after experience where the ego gets addicted to experience? Right? Well, I just finished this project. What's up? I've got to do something else now. I can't have a void or an open space for myself. I have to be constantly doing and busy.
And I feel a lot of that. I think I'm always wanting to go. But then at the same time, I do have that balance, I feel like. So, you know, like people might think that I'm always going, but I'm like, no, I really do have downtime. So I feel like it's balanced. I don't feel unbalanced. But I can see both ways. You know. Yeah.
So a lot of the time it's about us being in experiences that prevent us from being able to take those senses and kind of not so much turn them off, but not allow them to take us into our next experience. To be able to sit in contentment.
Well, that's
in santosha.
With like my youngest, you know, I'm sure we all know how they are always looking to the next holiday or whatever, and I'm like, I don't want to. We're right now. I just want to focus on right now. Can you just enjoy today?
Right.
So I'm constantly saying that, and it's a good reminder for me as well. So I'm saying that all the time. I just like enjoy this moment.
Staying in the present moment, having that contentment, santosha. And then, not looking for the next experience. Being able to go inward and just be with where you are. Good. So Iyengar, which we practice his style of yoga the other day with props and alignment, right? So Iyengar says that in Sanskrit, Pratyahara literally means to draw towards the opposite. So the normal movement of the senses is to flow outward, and this limb is concerned with going against that grain and flowing inward, which can be sometimes a very difficult reaction. So it is natural for us to want to use our senses. So don't be too hard on yourself when you're leaning towards that. That's the natural course of this experience of life, is to use our senses. And one of the interesting ones that we had learned when I was doing some teacher training was the sense of sight, and how some people do not have the senses that we have, right? And so we did a whole practice with our eyes closed. And what was that like? You know, how was that like to turn off that sense and to be able to focus inward and to get a bearings of where you are in time and space without that? You know, what if you didn't have a sense of smell? There's people that don't have a sense of smell. Their food tastes very, very different, right? So if you don't have a sense of smell, what would that be like?
Yeah, even the color blindness, when you see, like, a lot of times you see those videos where people get those special glasses, and you think, oh, what would it be like to not see the vivid colors? You know? Yeah.
So just taking those senses and breaking them down one by one and saying, okay, well, how does my body, what does my mind do when it leads me with a particular sense? And some of us have stronger senses than others. Some people are really emotionally triggered by smell. Some people are really emotionally or mentally triggered by sight. They see something and it takes them on this tangent, right? You can lose yourself in a song hearing that. It actually brings up emotional reactions, laughing or crying, sometimes anger or hurt, right? So how do we respond to our senses? What do they do? How do they take us to other places? And how can we learn to not follow that train, but to stay centered and internalized, and to stay balanced in the eye of the storm? Sometimes we want to go down that, but is it serving us to do so? So one of the quotes that I found was that that Pratyahara is like movement on the water. Okay, so like movement on the water that prevents us from seeing the depths. So our senses, right, are like movement on the water that prevent us from seeing the depths. And these changes keep us from seeing into the depth of our own being. The fluctuation of the senses tosses us around on waves of change between happiness and suffering.
I wanted to write all that, but I got
So like movement on water prevents us from seeing the depths. These changes keep us from seeing into the depth of our own being. The fluctuation of the senses, hearing, smelling, seeing, touching, it tosses us around on the waves of change between happiness and suffering.
What was after the fluctuation of senses?
Tosses us around on the waves of change between happiness and suffering. So noticing, again, like I said, noticing how our senses we respond to them emotionally, mentally, how they take us on trains of thought. Where do they lead us to? You know, are they always bringing us between that suffering and happiness all the time, where we can just be still in the moment, content, not in the past or the future, just present, content, and being able to internalize and be that I in the storm while things are moving around us, and we're able to remain calm, focused, observing.
Yeah, okay, so when we talk about that, I realize that when I'm trying to not be in the past or present or whatever, I actually use like sight observance to see what's around me.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know, just saying I to block everything out is definitely hard to do. I don't know.
So was that something that was learned? I know you had shared before different anxieties, right? So when you're tools that you're taught to help bring that in, right, to internalize a little bit, is to see something and to focus on it and to kind of go for a walk maybe and focus on a tree and walk up to that tree and kind of bring your senses down and in when you're feeling like you're out of control.
Yeah.
So that, and you're using
maybe
sight.
I never didn't like seek help to do that. Maybe I just
but that
started
is
doing
one of
that
the
on
tools,
my own.
right?
Yeah.
So it really helps to bring everything kind of in together where you're feeling it's out of control.
Yeah.
So the sight is what is being utilized, right? That's the sense.
Very heavily. Like how much am I relying on it?
Somebody that doesn't have sight and experiences the
wondering.
same thing, how would they handle it?
That's what I'm wondering, because I'm relying on that really heavily. So then if I didn't have that heavy sense, what would the other person do? That's what I'm realizing in my head.
That's
so
interesting.
I'm wondering,
I love it.
Yeah.
That's what this is for. So we all do have a drishti, though. We all have that inner mind, that inner sight, right? I mean, it does connect to our pineal gland. It starts with it helps with our endocrine system. So right here, which would be then moving into the next and changing our visual focus to a point within, helps us to internalize and to not be so pulled into the directions of our external senses. So the internal sense of drishti is at your ajna. So you'll see people actually, when they have their eyes closed, actually kind of start to look up into their third eye. They're not straining, but they're just kind of lifting their physical eyes up, focusing their attention on their internal mind or sight.
I do that all the time, even since I was a kid. But it hurts so bad, and I don't know, but it's just like
You're
my
straining.
eyeballs do it. I can't stop them from doing it.
They just do it.
They just do it. Like, I remember being a kid and always, like, looking up there, and I would be, like, trying to fall asleep. I'm like, why am I doing that? And I would literally force my eyes to go down.
Okay.
But I don't understand, like, maybe that's, like, what, like, how to stop that strain, I guess, from...
I don't know exact. This has been something that I've noticed when people are kind of trying to relax, or they're going through processing something, that their eyelids flutter and their eyeballs kind of roll in the back like that, and then their eyes are fluttering. So I've always taken it that they're doing some sort of a mental process. They're mentally processing something. I don't know that that's necessary in order to process it, but that's what their body's reaction is. So just noticing it and maybe trying to change the pattern of what that is. You could, especially because it's creating discomfort. If it wasn't creating discomfort, it'd be like, okay, well, that's just your body.
Yeah.
But, because it's creating, so try it now. Just try it by closing your eyes and just focusing on ajna, or focusing actually on any chakra. You can, but usually they try to do the drishti, which is where, your inner focus, your eyes are closed, so that sense of sight is really not being activated, but your inner focus, your inner drishti, is going to be at your third eye, which is going to help develop your intuition, which is internalization. And when you're able to internalize and to quiet the mind and quiet the senses that are around you, your intuition opens up, so you're using that sixth sense, not the 5 that are connecting to the external world, but the 6th one that connects us to your intuition, to your internal world, your inner knowing. You'll know things before they even occur, without having
if
to.
you just listen.
Without having to hear or taste or touch, your intuition is going to start to increase. So that's where this comes in. So changing our visual focus to a point within, we immediately begin the journey toward interiorization of consciousness. To do this, the point of focus, which is your drishti, recommended by yogis, is the metaphoric third eye. So there's a lot of different ways that people can activate their third eye. There's a lot of people that have a lot of intuitive hits and they just don't know what to do with them, or they think that they're just coincidence. But practicing this internalization, you're going to get the heartfelt sense of, yes, this is true for me, or no, this is not. What I notice a lot of the times now is that people will get that intuition or knowing that this is the right thing for me, but they don't listen to it because their mind gets involved and the chatter doesn't stop, or they don't trust themselves.
And it's almost like you're bouncing back and forth.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a ping pong. Like, is my mind right or is my intuition right?
Right. So practicing Pratyahara is going to clarify that, right? Practicing Pratyahara is going to help you to become calm, to become still, focusing on that internalization, knowing that what you're sensing in the outside and external world is not going to lead you to where you need to be, but knowing, working with your intuition, opening that, it's going to guide you. So say you're walking down the street and your intuition says, I need to go down to the bakery at the end of the street, but your sense of smell goes, but I can smell that cookie right now here at this bakery that I'm in front of. Which one do you follow? Now, if you go down to the one at the end of the street that your intuition was telling you to, you might meet somebody that changes your life. You might run into somebody that you were supposed to meet. You might, find a job that you were looking for because they're hiring. So many possibilities, right? But you go into the one that your nose is leading you to and you miss that opportunity because you're going to the bakery and your nose said, I want that now. So learning to not dismiss our senses, but knowing which ones are leading us where. And
which ones are the distractions?
Which ones are distracting, right? Or even, the sense of smell is good. We need that sense of smell. If we smell a skunk, we're not going to go in that direction. We're going to go in the opposite direction. There's a purpose for it, right? But to not let that be the discerning factor when we hear something within our own intuition.
Especially like if you know, like if you sense possible danger, like, or it's something that would be harming, and just to trust that and, move in a different direction or whatever it is that you're, But,
so this really does help us come into our own intuition, which is what guides us. It really does guide us, and we can feel it in our heart. We'll feel it when it gets light and moving into this direction feels good, just from the heart sense of our heart chakra. Or if it feels real heavy and something's just wrong, you might feel it in your gut or in your heart sense. So what are some of the ways that we can practice Pratyahara in our daily lives? I have a couple of ideas here, but I want you guys to maybe come up with a few that would work for you. So how can you practice Pratyahara, which is restraining your senses? Can we throw one out there?
Yeah.
All right. Okay. So pick a pose and stay in the moment as an observer. Notice how you move from the reality that you're in right now. So you can pick a pose that's real easy. You can pick a pose that's a little more challenging. How can you stay in the moment? Have you ever noticed someone that is really focused on doing something and they're really in the present moment and nothing else is going to be distracting them.
Yes.
So do that when you're practicing your Pratyahara. Move into Pratyahara, just like when we're doing this exercise. What's talking to you? Is it your sense of feel? Do you feel something in your body that's taking you out of that moment? You know, is the body doing it? You know, are you able to stay in that pose, or is there something distracting you in your sight? Close your eyes. Try to see how your body responds. So that's one way of practice in Pratyahara. Pay attention to seeking out stimulation as an escape. How many times do we seek out stimulation? Like I said, you're sitting down for like 2 minutes and here we go, we're scrolling through social media. How many times do you do that in a day? How many times do you seek out stimulation as an escape? And that can be any type of activity or an environment that you want to be in. So anything that's stimulating. How many times do we seek out stimulation? Choose your responses instead of reacting. And then moving into the yamas and the niyamas. Which niyamas and yamas could you use that will help you practice or become more in depth with your Pratyahara? So reviewing those yamas, ahimsa, which is non-harming, finding that peace. Satya, being truthful, having truthfulness and integrity. The asteya, which is the generosity or non-stealing. Brahmacharya, which is the right use of your energy and self-control and moderation. The parigraha, which is the non-hoarding or the gratitude. So of those yamas, which ones will help support having that internalization or not looking to the external or stimulation of our senses? The niyamas, which is sacha and the purity and the cleanliness. Sometimes less is more. Santosha, which is the contentment and the freedom. Tapas, discipline, that burning enthusiasm that we can have of wanting to accomplish this, or also establishing a non-attachment, being the observer. Tapas. Svadhyaya, which is the study of the self and the sacred text. So the more that you study yourself, the more you know what your triggers are going to be, or what you can let go of in order to not be triggered, to clean up some of the emotional or mental things that are harming for you. And Isvara Pranadhana, which is the devotion of the surrender to the higher power, just moving into the place of love. That can be your focus. Focusing and moving into, either your ajna or your heart center. Feeling in complete love surrounding you and sending out love as well as receiving love. When you're in that state of love, of real, true, unconditional love, the vibration of love, then your senses are not as stimulating, or they will not be stimulated. If you notice that you're ever in that place, if we all have children here, right? So when you're with that child, when that child's first born, nothing else is really triggering you, right? You're so focused in this enveloped feeling of deep, deep love with this child that, you can hear the phone ring and it doesn't matter. So just trying to connect with that unconditional love, being in that place and vibration of love, will feed us and internalize us and bring us into our divine nature, connecting with that divine nature of ourselves. that it's okay if that phone's ringing. I don't need to answer that right now. I'm where I need to be. So the homework would be, what 5 traits do you want to exhibit, or what you would like to make up in your as your character? So what do you want to embody? Using the senses, we bring in all this stimuli, and this stimuli builds our personality and our character. Oh, I believe that. I really like that. Ooh, this is something I know that it's going to be right for me. I'm going to take that on as something of myself. I'm going to use this. So, what are you looking to embody? What are you looking to exhibit? What are you looking to take on? And then once you find that, those are the things that you want to surround yourself with. So what it's doing is it's taking all of this external stimulation that we are living in, environments, exposing ourselves to, media, friends, family, jobs, environments. We're taking all of that in. That is coming in, and that is producing part of who we are, because we're embodying it. So if we don't like what we see, or if we want to start to embody something else or to exhibit something else, start to move into the area of allowing our senses to interact with that. Interact with what you want to be, or what you want to become, what you want to exhibit. Kind of goes along with the saying, like attracts like. We don't want our children or people that we love to hang out with the wrong crowd. Why?
And then the wrong crowd too.
It's because they start to exhibit that behavior. So what do you want to exhibit? What do you want to have more of? What are your senses activating with, stimulating with, absorbing, creating? So 5 traits. And then see how you can incorporate those in your life by using your senses to stimulate with those. And then practicing with Pratyahara to go ahead and know that, internalizing, once you're able to embody certain things, you can take those senses, so they work for you and with you. You take those senses and you then learn how to know that they are just senses, right? They've done their job to take in what they need to, and then you can internalize and use that to move into a deeper sense of self. So the senses are not supposed to be something that we suppress or shut down, that we turn off, because they won't. But they do have purpose. Learning how to use our senses, what we surround ourselves with. And then also learning to know where their place is, and that is not something that we need to activate when we're trying to come into our inner worlds. Not letting them overrun our lives and move us from one experience to the next because of their desire. Any questions? Pratyahara.
Yeah, can you spell that?
Yes, I will. Pratyahara. Pratyahara.
That's close.
Okay. And then in our daily practice, using everything that we've learned so far to bring us into a deeper sense of meditation, which is our goal. It's not just meditation, but actually accomplishing that place of tranquility, which is Samadhi.
Amidst our daily chaos.
In spite of, yes. A constant place of tranquility. Yes. Even though the things around us are going on, we can still maintain our joy.
Now, I loved this. This was really good because I never really thought about what is the place of my senses. You know, what place should they be in? How can I use them?
Yes.
You know, instead of having them just take over,
Move
how
you
can
along.
I
Exactly.
replace them? And that's just something I just didn't really talk about.
We don't, though.
Yeah.
We don't. We are so stimulated. Our lives, our social lives, and just the way that our world is right now, everything is a stimulation. Oh, well, I mean, just look at TV. You know, everything is moving you into the next experience or stimulation. They're always triggering your senses. And we live our life based on that. And is that the life that we want to live? Are we choosing it, or are we just being strung along based on our senses and how everybody else is pulling at it? Yeah. Good deal, guys. All right, so we're all set with that for Pratyahara, and we're going to be moving into, tomorrow will be another asana practice, right? So we'll need our mats tomorrow.